Hello everyone, I'm just recording a quick video that will walk through the process for installing Macaulay 2 on either a Windows machine or on a Linux-based machine. On a Windows machine, there is an additional step of installing a program called Windows Subsystem for Linux, which is a virtual machine that runs on top of your computer. It's like a computer inside your computer that allows you to run Linux on top of Windows. And this is because Macaulay 2 is only developed for either Linux or Mac. It's not actually supported on Windows. So this is a bit more of a workaround. So there's just this extra step on Windows, and it begins with installing Windows Subsystem for Linux, which the guide that ended up working for me was this one here, which I sent out a link to on the Macaulay 2 text chat channel of the Polymath Discord. There's two methods of installing. This simplified install, which just is supposed to do it with one command. I did not actually get this to work. I got the manual install working, and that didn't actually take too many steps, fortunately. Didn't take too much time. So just talking through some of the manual installation steps. First, there's this command that you need to type in that enables the Windows Subsystem for Linux feature. That's actually equivalent to going down to the search here and going to turn Windows features on or off, which is something that you can search for and will find. And then it brings up a dialog box that will perform the same function as this command. You just need to scroll down to Windows Subsystem for Linux and then check the box and restart your computer. But while you're at it, there are a couple of other things that you should make sure are checked that the guide here actually does not tell you that you should have checked, but you actually do need them. In particular, this virtual machine platform should be checked. We are running a virtual machine. Windows Subsystem for Linux is a virtual machine, so we'll need that. And also, you might end up needing this Hyper-V feature. You notice the description here. Well, maybe you can't read it because the text is really small, but it says, provide services and management tools for creating and running virtual machines and their resources. I did not actually need to check this option to get it working, but someone that I was helping with this process did need to check a similar option. I think it was Windows Hypervisor platform was what they needed to check. So if you have issues during the installation process with things still not working, you can try toggling either Windows Hypervisor platform or this Hyper-V setting, in addition to the Windows Subsystem for Linux setting and the virtual machine platform setting, which you should definitely turn on. All right, once you turn those features on, there's this step of checking requirements for running Windows Subsystem for Linux, but as long as you've been keeping your Windows system up to date, you won't really need to worry about this. The third step is to, oh, is that just the same as, yeah, that's the same as that virtual machine feature that I pulled up earlier, this one right here, virtual machine platform right there. And then you'll need to restart your computer. And then you'll need to download this file and click on it to open it, and then it will install some update on your machine. And then now we're at the stage when we can actually start really getting going here. We just need to tell Windows Subsystem for Linux that we want to set the default version to 2 instead of to 1. And to do that, you can go to a command prompt by typing CMD in your search here, running it as administrator, and then typing in that command WSL set default version 2. All right, and then we just need to go to the Microsoft Store and select Linux distribution. I recommend Ubuntu because it has the most recent version of Macaulay 2, and it seems to be better supported by the Macaulay 2 creators. Of course, you can choose to use something else if you have a preference, if you've already used Linux before. I personally use Fedora instead of Ubuntu, for example. But if you're just getting this for this project, then it doesn't really matter what you get. So Ubuntu is an easy choice. And you just search for Ubuntu, you click on it, and then you click that Get button, and it'll take some time to download and install, but after a few minutes, it'll be done, and then you can hit this launch button. And when I hit this launch button, it opens this screen. Takes a little bit to load, but then it brings up a little command line here. And this is now the Windows subsystem for Linux virtual machine running on our computer. This is an entire Linux computer running inside of our Windows computer. And if you're running a Linux computer already, from this point onward, the guide is the same for you as it is for somebody running this on Windows. So the installation from here on out is the same, whether you're running Ubuntu as your normal machine or whether you're running Ubuntu as a virtual machine. And to get that instruction set, we can actually go to the Macaulay 2 website, and it has this button right here, download it. And it has instructions for installing on Linux, which we're now running a Linux virtual machine, so we'll need to install it on Linux. And we are running Ubuntu. That's the one that I picked. So I'll click on that. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that they provided to install Macaulay 2. If you happen to be running Ubuntu 21.04, you can install it with just this command right here. However, the version of Ubuntu that is installed on Windows is 20.04, not 21.04. So for that reason, we actually need to perform this additional step right here, which adds the download repository location. It adds the location that all the files are to where the package management program searches for. This apt program that's referenced in the command here is a package management program. It's kind of like Windows Update. It automatically handles gathering dependency programs and managing perhaps conflicting versions of dependencies. Should zoom in up here so you can see the command I'm typing in. So this apt program will handle installing Macaulay 2 for us, installing all of the prerequisite programs for us, and we just need to tell it where to look, and that's what this command does for us. I've actually already done this on this Ubuntu machine, but I can still type the command again, and you'll be able to see what it looks like. It just asks us for confirmation, gives us a description of what this is, and asks us for confirmation before we add it to our repository list. And so I'll hit enter because I trust Macaulay 2. And it takes some time pulling some URLs, downloading some things, but finishes without taking too much time. And then now that we've added the repository location, we just need to install Macaulay 2 with this second command here, this sudo apt install Macaulay 2. I've already installed Macaulay 2, so it's not going to do anything. It just tells me that it's already been installed. But from this screen, after typing this command, it would normally download and show you some progress information about all of the things that it's downloading and installing. And this step might take perhaps 10 minutes, depending on the speed of your computer. But after this step has been completed, you have Macaulay 2 on your computer, and you can type in capital M2, and it will pull up Macaulay 2, and you'll be able to use it to perform all the calculations that we've been talking about in the computational algebra materials, all the stuff that we've been doing so far. And you can just leave it with exit, and that takes you back to the command line from before. Well, if you want to be able to use Macaulay to load files that you've written, you want to actually be able to edit files that the Linux virtual machine will be able to see. If I look for the current files that are in the current directory that I'm located in by typing ls for list, it just tells me that there's like nothing here. I created this directory foo a while back. There's nothing in it, I don't think. Yeah, there's nothing in that. This cd command stands for change directory, by the way. So there's no files here, point being, and there's no Macaulay 2 file here in particular. In order to create a Macaulay 2 file, I would need to have some manner of editing a text file. And at least presently, there is not a graphical user interface for this virtual machine that we've installed. There's just this text-only user interface. And you can use it this way. Plenty of people use a text-based user interface. And if you've done this before, and you're familiar with a text-based editing program like Vim or Emacs or something like this, then you can go to town at this point. For example, if I type in Emacs, it opens up this text-based editing mode where I can't really use the mouse. See how the mouse isn't moving the flashing cursor down here? It's just like a highlighting thing. It doesn't do anything else. I can't click up here to open this dialog menu. I can't click on this to open the home directory. Like the mouse isn't doing anything. But there's instructions for keyboard shortcuts that perform tasks that we would normally perform with the mouse, like exiting the program, for example. This C stands for Command X, or excuse me, Control X, Control C. I posted a little guide on the Macaulay 2 text channel of the Discord server for Emacs keyboard shortcuts if you want to use this program in a text-based user interface way. I'm going to hit Control X and Control C to exit this program. However, I would imagine that most of you don't want to use just a text-based interface because that is not as user-friendly or as intuitive, and it's not what we're used to, certainly. So I managed to track down a way to set up a visual user interface that seems to work pretty well. I did it by installing this program called GWSL, which stands for Graphical Windows Subsystem for Linux. And I searched for it in the Windows Store. I pressed the Get button. I pressed the Launch button. And it came up in my toolbar down here. It's this little entry right here. Might be kind of small. You might not be able to see it very well, but it looks like two orange rectangles on top of each other. And when I click it, it brings this up right here. And what's really nice about this is that it allows me to browse my Linux files right here. When I click that, it brings up a standard Windows Explorer graphical box here. And I can go into my user directory by clicking on user. Can I zoom in on this? Yeah, I'll zoom in so that you can really see. So I click on user right here, and then I click on maybe it's not user. Where is it? Oh, I click on home. Yeah, sorry. It's not user, it's home. I click on home, I click on mic, and then do you see how there's this foo folder right there? that foo folder is the same folder as the foo folder from the virtual machine. So in particular, I could come in here, I could create a new file and call it something. And I could edit it in Windows using whatever editing program I want to, like Jupyter or Spider, or, well, I don't think Jupyter edits text. Spider, like Anaconda, Navigator, or whatever, VS Code, etc. But I could also just edit this with Notepad. Or maybe not, it's not responding. Maybe this doesn't work. Let me create the file. Not really sure why that happened. It did see the file inside this folder, so not really sure why that happened, but I'll worry about that later. But anyway, the point that I was trying to make was that this GWSL program allows us to use graphical applications in our Linux virtual machine. So for example, I can click Linux apps, and then well, before it wasn't loading, it was, maybe this has something to do with the fact that my Notepad crashed. Because now this is not working. Maybe I should quit it and launch it again. But anyway, while we're waiting for that, I'll just make a note. I also did have to install Emacs on this Ubuntu virtual machine by typing the command sudo apt-get install Emacs. Again, since I already installed it, it's not going to say anything anymore. And then the other thing that I needed to do was load up Macaulay 2, the standard terminal interface with Macaulay 2. And I needed to type in this command, setup Emacs, with 2 open parentheses here. And what that did was create a little configuration file in my home directory that the Emacs program can look for and do things with in order to make that whole interface work properly. And since apparently my computer is all frozen now and things aren't working correctly, because my Notepad is still frozen, for example, I can't show off Emacs running in graphical mode, but previously all I did was go into that drop-down menu that I showed you by clicking on those double orange rectangles, and I looked in the list of Linux apps, and Emacs was at the top of the list, and then I was able to just hit F12 to open up Macaulay 2 in the same manner that I showed off in the Macaulay 2 demo session that we did on last Tuesday. All right, a couple more things to make note of. You may need to manually update your Windows subsystem for Linux version from 1 to 2. This is one of the things to try if you start getting some errors. You can type this command right here, WSL list verbose, or alternatively -L-V. So I'll show you what that looks like. That looks like on mine, says that Ubuntu is installed on my machine and it's running and it's version 2. And if it was version 1, I would know that I needed to update it to version 2. And this command down here is the command to update it. It's WSL set version and then distribution name. So there's the name right there. I type in whatever is in that field, and then the version number I want to update it to. In this case, I would want to update it to 2. I'm not going to run this command because it already is version 2, but that's what you would do. And the other thing that I will note is that if you have a problem with it not updating to version 2 or not installing properly, you might have an issue with your BIOS settings not being configured to allow for a virtual machine to run on Windows. This is something that I needed to do on my machine. So I needed to boot up my computer, and then when I boot up my computer, there's this little screen like this that says, please press delete or F2 to enter BIOS settings. So I have to hit delete really fast because the screen only flashes up for like half a second, and then it will bring up the BIOS settings, and then I had to dig through and find which setting corresponded to enabling virtual machines. I actually had quite a difficult time finding it on my BIOS, and I had to look up my motherboard's name in order to try and find what the setting was called, but I did manage to track it down after a while. So if this is something that you have trouble with, or if you don't get a screen at all like this, it just goes straight to Windows and you're confused, feel free to message me. I'd be happy to help you try and get this set up. I wonder if it's working now, because the notepad finally closed. So maybe whatever got frozen is no longer frozen. Okay, it's working again, it seems. Let me fire up Ubuntu again. And Linux apps, here we go. Now that it's unfrozen, this Emacs GUI option was one of the first options in my list. And when I hit that, it pulls up this little window, and this is now like a normal editing program. It still shows me the keyboard shortcuts in case I want to use it, but this is now a normal editing program that I can interact with using the mouse, and you can see that my mouse is now actually moving the cursor. So, and I can hit new file, and I can create a new file. And type some Macaulay 2 commands. And since I've set up Macaulay 2 on this, to work with Emacs on this virtual machine, if I hit F12, it opens up that Macaulay 2 window. And also, if I have a file that I'm editing and I highlight some text, you can't really see the highlighting because it's very light gray, but this is highlighted. If I hit F11, this evaluates the code that I've highlighted in the running kernel over here, so I can be editing some complicated for loop and send little chunks of it off in order to try them out and see how they work. All right, so that is about it for what I figured out for running Macaulay 2 on Windows via the Windows subsystem for Linux. As I mentioned, a lot of these steps are going to be similar if you're using a Linux machine. It'll actually be easier to install because you won't have to do this separate graphical WSL thing to get the graphical user interface to work. And you won't have to install the Windows subsystem for Linux stuff and turn Windows features on and off and all that stuff. So it'll be much more streamlined. All you'll need to do is perform these 2 commands in terminal in order to install Macaulay 2. And that should be it. So let me know if you have any issues. I'd be happy to meet with you to try and work them out, and have a great rest of your day.